What's going on, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here, joined by Daire from Packer Report, who wrote a great piece earlier this morning, and I wanted to talk to you about, Daire, regarding Jeff Hafley and his ability to really flip the script on the Lions in this dominating performance. A performance that I think a lot of people maybe expected the Packers to be able to go toe-to-toe at times, but this has been an offense in Detroit that has not only dominated the Packers, but it's been marching up and down the field and blowing out scoreboards against the league for the last few years. What did you see in Hafley's approach that allowed the Packers to really put the clamps on Detroit?
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about a performance that just when one team does one thing, you don't like just be one dimensional, and he completely switched it up. I mean, this was one of the best showings Hafley has had. I wrote about in the article that the last time these two teams played, it was all blitzes from Hafley. It was the most blitzes in any game last year was the two Lions games. And then to come out, and they were literally bottom in the NFL in blitz rate this weekend, 11%, which is, I mean, you're talking percentages at this time in the season's a little early. Instead, we can just call it four blitzes. They blitzed them four times on like 44 dropbacks. So, yeah, I mean, phenomenal, just gamesmanship. And you've seen it in like the chart that shows what Goff was throwing. Like, it was everything was short. Jameer Gibbs got 10 receptions in this game. That wasn't just, they weren't open downfield and they had to take some check down. Some of those were, but like a lot of those plays were the Lions thinking, okay, we're going to get our fast guys, Gibbs and James and Williams in particular, these quick little routes. They're going to get out in space, and the Packers aren't going to have anyone left to tackle them because everyone's coming at Goff. The Packers did the complete opposite, and the Lions just had no answer.
I love the fact that so much of this kind of Victory Monday, right, has been focused on Micah Parsons for good reason. He clearly affected the game when he was out there, but he wasn't out there a whole lot. And you look at what you're talking about regarding the Packers really playing coverage, right? Tons of different looks with zone reads mostly, lots of eyes on the quarterback. The guys up front did the work, and it wasn't just Micah Parsons. I know he affected a lot of the game as far as, the attention they gave him on passing downs and things of that nature, but to a guy pretty much across the board up front, whether it was, Wooden and company inside, whether it was Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness, they won up front in a way that I don't think we're really kind of used to against Detroit. Now, some of that is they've switched parts along that offensive line, clearly, but that to me was a pleasant surprise and pretty, great to think about how it's just the start and these guys could continue to grow throughout the season.
Yeah, those, like as you said, those guys up the middle. If I had any questions in this game, I was thinking, oh man, this could be the game where like
Right.
David Montgomery runs for like
Montgomery
80
runs
yards right
all
up the
over
middle.
them,
Yeah,
right?
and
Right.
and they just didn't allow that to happen. And yeah, but listen, everyone says, oh, Parsons going to command double teams to open those guys up one on one. Like they still have to go and win one on one. They're not
Exactly.
going completely unblocked, and they did that. And you mentioned the front seven, and I wrote about like it goes beyond that. Like everyone's talking about, Parsons is this force multiplier. He's going to make everyone else on along the defensive line better. But like he made Evan Williams better. Evan Williams doesn't go pick that ball off if it isn't for the pressure that Micah Parsons applies. And that was a really, really amazing play from Williams. But yeah, this is why pass rushers get paid the second most of any position in the NFL. Is that there's guys the safeties are improving off of your pass rushers. It's not just the guy next to him; it's the entire defense.
When you look at kind of the game plan from Hafley, you mentioned the kind of dearth of blitzes, any kind of pressure. That is kind of unexpected because, especially coming off of last year, you saw guys like Edgerrin Cooper and even Quay Walker at times lining up on the edge and even blitzing from depth at the linebacker spot. And there certainly were a number of mug fronts, times that he had a bunch of bodies up at the line of scrimmage, but he kept dropping out. Even a three-man rush, which was utilized very well in that, not goal line, but red zone stand early in the game. To me, that was a big, I'm not going to say confusion for Goff, because I think a quarterback that caliber, been in the league this long, there's nothing he hasn't seen,
Yep.
but it certainly seemed unexpected from the Lions.
Yeah, I like for the record, I don't think this is, oh, the Packers have completely changed their approach. They're not a business team
Right.
anymore. No. I think
Right.
it was just this game. Like I think, we still haven't seen what this team looks like with Parsons yet. Like this was kind of I'm not going to call it a one-off, but like this is what the best defensive coordinators do. They play to every team, every offense they're up against. They're not just, this is the way we play and we're gonna, one approach defeats all kind of purpose. That's not what Halfley is. And so really excited. And luckily we only have 4 days to, boast and brag and talk up this team before we get a very interesting matchup with Washington. So it'll
I
be
wanted
interesting to see how they go.
I wanted to ask you about that because one of the things that you saw not only Parsons but a bunch of these guys do is win quickly inside, like especially off the edge. There was one really obviously great bull rush by Gary on his sack, but there were a number of times with Parsons in particular where he beats Sewell inside. And that's well and good when you've got Jared Statue Goff back there. But man, that's a whole nother animal at quarterback coming into Lambeau on Thursday night. I have to suspect that we'll see maybe a similar approach as far as playing coverage and only rushing four, but I got to think the approach and what the ask is of those guys up front, particularly on the edges, is going to be really different just because of the nature of Daniels and how good he is with his feet.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point you make that, it's all well and good against a non-mobile quarterback that coming right up the middle. But and the reason why Parsons wins so much like that is because these offensive linemen give him so much respect to the outside because they know how fast he is. Everyone's petrified when they're lining up against him. So
Right.
they give him that extra half a yard on the inside, and like he's so like sneaky strong. Like it really is one of the more lesser respect. I would argue that him and Miles Garrett almost have like opposite skill sets to what they look
Yes.
like. You would imagine that that's
Right.
Miles Garrett, the guy powering up the middle. Garrett is like bending around the corner in a way that no man his size should. And then Parsons, this guy who you'd think is just a speed rusher turned from linebacker into an edge rusher, is this super powerful guy who comes up the middle. So yeah, that's interesting. I think the Green Bay are going to need to have plans in place for the rushing element of Jaden Daniels. They need to go back and look at how they fared against mobile quarterbacks last year. Something tells me they were pretty good at that. And obviously, when you've got linebackers who are as fast as Cooper and Walker, that definitely helps if you're going to spy the Daniels.
You mentioned the big play from Evan Williams, certainly a product of the very quick pressure from Micah Parsons. I think Williams overall, and obviously Xavier McKinney, I think they had a strong game. And I think Evan Williams, well, I played one of his best games as a Packer overall. And I do think a lot of that is because of that approach where we're going to constrict the pocket with four. We're going to play whatever coverages, whether it's cover three, whether it's four, whether it's quarters, whatever. There were multiple times where you could tell the safeties, the defensive backs in general, were on the front foot, were on the balls of their feet, knowing that that ball has to come out quick. I think those opportunities are going to continue to come because of the fact that you can play with vision in this secondary. And if the quarterback speed, release is sped up necessarily because of the fact that he doesn't have more than 3 seconds to make a decision and get rid of the ball, man, as a member of the secondary, you've got to be excited about the potential for more interceptions, more tip balls, more, pass breakups, simply because the ball's got to come out quick and you have your eyes on the quarterback.
Yeah, and all these guys are like, you look at Nixon and Hobbs, especially, they're former slot corners that maybe now turned to outside corner. Bullard has been playing up at the line so much. McKinney can play close to the box. Like these guys are used to, playing within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage and like firing down on it on any kind of pass that comes. And you just seen it with Williams the other day. And like this is one of the best teams in the league in terms of like just they're they play so well cohesively. Like you seen it last year, obviously with Hafley, and I've spoke about it all off season that the lack of turnover in the secondary and in the linebacking unit means that they haven't really needed to install anything over the summer. So they've just been, preparing for games and obviously just making this defense even more complex and adding layers to it. And yeah, as you said, like they're going to be able to play so much faster. There's going to be less time spent thinking on things. Now that can be dangerous. Obviously, you can have guys jump on every chance they get, double moves, just destroying the defense. I do think, this defense could get served some humble pie at some point this year. And, you just got to accept it that not every team wins it. You don't win every game in the NFL. And, a 12-4 season is still a really, really good season. Or what is it, 12-5 now? Like that's,
Right.
that kind of season is more than acceptable. And, you're going to get lessons along the way. But as long as you're good to go by January, you even seen it with Parsons. Like he was saying after the game, like, yeah, I don't even need to come back. Like we're set. Like I'll be ready in January.
One of the things too, you're talking about like certainly vision on the quarterback and, the ability to break on things. But man, when you're talking about flipping the script, right, and not blitzing as much, and that is something where Ben Johnson last year took advantage of Hafley on a number of occasions, lots of times on third down, right? Um, Now it would seem, and I think we heard Hafley talk about this. We heard some of the other defensive coaches talk about wanting to be, lead the league in disguise, like showing something pre-snap and then getting into something else. How much of that did you see coming off yesterday's game when you were writing up this idea that, there were lots of different ways to kind of put their coverages out there, but how much kind of pre-snap into post-snap disguise did you see? Because to me, I didn't see a ton of rotation the way some of the mad scientist type stuff we saw last year, where he has like corners and safeties. I mean, right up the line of scrimmage, bailing out into like cover three, and I don't think I saw a ton of that yesterday. I don't know. Maybe your eyes were different, but to me, I saw a lot of not static sets. Still motion pre-snap to maybe try and make it look like too high and drop the safety down at the last second to a cover three look, etc. But the kind of the mad scientist stuff that we saw last year, I didn't see a ton of that against Detroit. What
Yeah,
did you see?
you'd be absolutely right saying that. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think we did see some of it, and we didn't see anything that we didn't see last year. Like there was
Right.
nothing new and revolutionary. And he's the mad scientist stuff. Maybe have to wait a few weeks before
Yeah.
that truly comes
Right.
out. And like obviously he's going to hold some things. Like whenever you're winning the game, maybe you're like they were essentially leading the whole way. You're not going to have to pull out that kind of stuff when you're like, we'll just bring in Micah Parsons and make him throw the ball in two
Right.
seconds anyway.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, no, the crazy ones that they were pulling out last year, a lot of them were like going to cover two, where you've got
Right.
like someone like down, like pressing the slot receiver, bailing like 30 yards back. Some of the craziest stuff you'd ever see. But no, we didn't see any of that yesterday. We did see cover two, obviously, but it was more conventional with just and McKinney and Williams both high, and the vast majority of those like disguises the NFL quarterbacks have seen hundreds of times. Like there are things that are employed from high school levels upwards, so it's not anything that's completely revolutionary. But yeah, I mean, he will probably bring out the bag of tricks at some point this season, but no need to waste it in a game where you're
Well, you're
comfortably ahead.
comfortably ahead, right? Well, I really appreciate the time, Dara. Like I said, there's a great article to check out at Packer Report. We've linked to it in the description of this video. Make sure you check out all of Dara's work. It's excellent. Thanks so much for the time, man.
Thanks for having me, Aaron.